It is a gorgeous Friday afternoon here in coastal Massachusetts, and I am just headed off to the beach. But before I do, I wanted to hop on here and record the intro for today's episode because it feels so relevant. You all know that I am all about life by design, summer by design. I've been talking about that a lot here recently, and that is such a huge aspect of being a prosperous empath, like truly giving yourself the permission to reinvent your schedule, your business, your lifestyle by your own design, which is why I'm so thrilled for our guest today, because we're going to dive in and talk about financial independence, retire early, or the FIRE movement. Now, I have been learning and studying the FIRE movement for a while, but our guest today is really an expert in FIRE, having achieved it for himself. And I'm really excited to have Brandon Clark on the podcast today to talk more about this. We're going to talk all about how Brandon transitioned from working at a Big Four accounting firm into financial planning and then eventually landing on coaching. We're going to discuss how he chose the FIRE movement for himself, how it's changed his business, his life, his lifestyle, which includes traveling a couple months a year, of course. We jump into how you can begin to learn more if you're interested about FIRE, some of our personal favorite resources, both YouTubers and books that have really supported Brandon and myself in learning more about FIRE and financial independence. And Brandon's going to share a bit more about his business and how he helps his clients shift their internal relationship with money as it impacts their external relationship with and the possession of wealth. It is such a good conversation. It's so timely and relevant, I imagine, for all of you. And Brandon feels like the perfect guest to chat more about this. So Brandon and I, we must have met over a decade ago at this point in a networking group that we both belonged to in DC, which I know I've shared about before in the podcast. BNI, it stands for Business Networking International. And we just really stuck up a relationship and have stayed connected over the years. So Brandon Clark is a CPA and coach who partners with people to gain control over their most precious resources, their mindset, time, and money. Oof, my favorite topics. This allows his clients to pursue a life of their own design and to truly be free. He currently works in his own coaching practice, Reexamine Wealth, and is a financial advisor at financial planning firm Toller Financial Group. He enjoys traveling and has built a lifestyle that allows him to travel multiple months during the year. Amen to that. Prior to his current roles, he owned an accounting firm. He built the firm from a solo practice into a team of 4. He exited the firm through an acquisition in 2021 to pursue his current path. He's worked as a financial professional in various firms and roles for the last 15 years. This is such a juicy conversation, so let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Brandon, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Really glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I was thinking as we were getting ready to record, I was thinking about when we first met each other and where, I mean, I guess where each of us would have been in life when we initially connected. But I can say that when I first met you, it was in BNI. We were both in chapters in DC.
That is true.
And I am imagining that I was still fully employed at the government, in the government.
I don't recall. You were definitely a coach, I feel
Yeah.
like. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but I didn't know all the background. You kept it like it wasn't the thing that I knew about you, you know?
It was certainly not the thing I wanted to talk about. But this is about you. So let's shift gears. I'd love to invite you to share your pronouns with my audience and a little bit about your story.
Sure. Let's see. So I'm Brandon Clark. My pronouns are he, him. Let's see. I am a DC native. I was born and raised in DC and still reside here. Um, I guess I kind of went through a professional change, if you will. Like I spent most of my, adult life as an accountant, and decided that, that wasn't quite for me. There were things that were really cool about it. I really loved just sort of like the order and systems piece of that. And I was going to say, I think one of the other things too is just like money itself and how money, like what it can do for you, was really interesting to me. So that basically going down that path kind of opened up this broader world of like finance and how people deal with money and all of those different things. And so that's definitely a key piece of, of who I am. I guess I started that part of my life back in like 2005 when I went to business school. And so from there, I knew from the start that the thing that I wanted was to be a CPA. I knew that I wanted that whatever it was, that kind of life where, I could create my own path and I had this, this knowledge that like no one could really take it from me, that I'd have skills where I'd be able to write my own ticket and I'd be in demand. That was a key part of like, that decision and why I went to it. And I guess I would say like, that's also a part of what drew me into FIRE as well, which is one of the things we're going to talk about. So at any rate, fast forward a little bit, I had the opportunity, I worked in Big Four public accounting. I had the opportunity to later on, make some changes in my career, just trying to figure out, what's the spot that really resonated for me. And so moved through Big Four public accounting into smaller regional firms and tried out government accounting. And I think the key piece was that I was looking for a bit more impact, more connection to people, and so forth. And through that, ended up moving into owning my own small business, which was a really great opportunity. I grew that practice into a team of about 4 people, which was actually a lot more fun than I think I even realized that like it would all be. I think at heart, like just working with people and kind of like nurturing them and like growing people is like a big part of like who I am and the work that I do. And so that was, definitely a piece of that. I got to hone that ability a good bit through that experience. At any rate, at some point I just realized that path wasn't totally for me, and decided to exit that business and start on this newer path to financial planning. And financial planning was always something that was kind of in the back of my head. And through gaining a bit of space, I was actually able to realize there was this other thing that was out there for me, which was coaching. And so part of what I do now is I work in financial planning as a financial planner and investment manager. And so I spend about 75% of my time there, and then 25% as a coach now. And I was going to say, basically, I would have never come to that place if I hadn't given myself space. And I took about 9 months off after I exit my firm and just really focused on like being a person like who didn't work for a bit and relaxing. And the thing that just kept coming back is like both scary but really interesting was coaching.
I mean, I love that. I love, I mean, I can appreciate both of us having spent many of our career years in DC. Like there's such a focus on your work in DC that taking that space and time away from work can really illuminate where your true passions are. And I really appreciate you sharing the trajectory of your career and the turns along the way, because it sounds like even when you were managing your firm that you still got a lot of joy from building people and connecting and the collaboration aspect of it, which
Definitely.
not surprisingly are, some of the key qualities of being a coach. So it would make sense that when you would allow yourself that space from kind of the grind, that you'd be able to connect more with all of your gifts and all of your passions.
Definitely.
Well, let's jump in, because I have never had anyone on the podcast today to talk about FIRE. I am myself not an expert in it, although I love some YouTubers who talk about FIRE. So why don't we just start from the beginning, and I'd love for you to educate my audience what FIRE is, and also what your relationship and experience with FIRE is.
Sure. So FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And so it is essentially a movement where people, a lot of people are kind of typically come to it because they're tired of like the American dream. And I guess there's this idea that like when you think about it, in some ways, a lot of what we're seeing, especially kind of post-pandemic, is just that the American dream is a little bit broken. So people, I guess just like all of those pieces of like house, the college, all of that, like big weddings and things like that, people end up accruing a lot of debt. And so a lot of what happens with FIRE is that people become really intentional about their spending and, where they want their life to go. And, obviously the goal, it says it in the title, is early retiring, putting yourself in the position to 10 to 15 years out from starting to, really save and get your money together to be able to, retire and, leave the workforce and do whatever it is that you want in life. I guess one thing I'll say is that a lot of people who've heard of it, they see these kind of like the poster boys for it, which are these like, maybe tech bros and people who make really high salaries and they, save a ton of money. And so the idea is just like, well, that doesn't resonate with me. That's not me. Of course, this person who makes 200 to 300 grand and is single without kids can save a ton of money and then retire in 10 years. That's not me. But I think that the movement has evolved a bit and gone less from that sort of media view of, of what's kind of sexy. And instead, it's just people who are like, that exactly what I said, who want to be a lot more intentional about their money and want to learn, like, what are the tools and things that, that I didn't have exposure to kind of growing up or in school, to actually build enough financial stability for themselves to do what they want in their lives. So that's kind of how I'd summarize FIRE. My own relationship to it is just that I'm a money nerd at heart. And so it was just like, it was cool. Like I found this thing where it's like cool to talk about money and all these nerdy things that you can do about it and investment accounts.
I love how your face just lit up when you said that.
So that's like a part of me that is definitely, it was like, oh wow, these people are speaking my language. It sounds wonderful. Um, so that's one part of it, but I definitely think the other part was a little bit of that story that I was telling you about the misalignment with my field, where it was like, it was good, and like accounting was good enough for me. Like I had a good life there, but there was always just something a little bit missing. And I think that's probably something that people who move towards FIRE have in common, is just that piece. Um, is just kind of, there's something missing, and I kind of want to run towards retirement. And I would say that definitely described a portion of my career. Um, but ultimately, I think as I started to figure out some of the other things, I definitely used like this financial stability that I created for myself in my life. I used that as a platform to go out and experiment in other areas. I was able to leave larger firms in very stressful, boring, maybe a little bit toxic positions. And, I was able to do that because I didn't have to worry about my own financial stability. I always was I saved, and I continued to save and invest. And those investments really end up being a very nice platform to make it so that you, I guess, for lack of a better word, you have FU money, and you can do whatever it is that you want in your life.
I really appreciated how you started that share with just the invitation to consider that for many of us, the American dream is broken. Because I think with money in particular, like if you're not intentional with your money and designing your relationship with your money and how you want to invest and save and spend your money, you can truly become controlled by it. Whether you're indebted or whether you spend based on comparison and what the neighbors have, or what your siblings have, or what you didn't have growing up. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of what matters to you most. It also makes me think of the book. Have you heard of the book, The Millionaire Next Door?
Yes, definitely. Good book.
Love that book, Brandon. And one of the things that I most appreciated in that book was like the invitation to consider that so many of the millionaires that we see around us every day are the people that are least likely, like or the ones who you would be least likely to think are the millionaires, because they're the ones with the smaller square footage homes in the large neighborhoods, or the ones who drive the Hondas, in the neighborhoods with all luxury cars. And and what a beautiful reminder that when you're really connected with your values and what's important to you and how you want to prioritize your money, that it's so much easier to make the natural next decisions with your finances.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're speaking my language. And I guess, just to echo that point, and, kind of also like double recommend that book that you just mentioned. That book is like a great kind of lens into, what building wealth for a lot of people who are able to do that really looks like. And when we're on the financial planning and investment management side, like that's the way a lot of our clients look, is you would never know it.
Mm-hmm. I also just want to be responsible for naming that book is a bit outdated. It was written in I don't know if it was like the 90s or the early 2000s, and it's two white dudes. And, white dudes are often the people that we learn about finances from, and like blah, blah, blah. And there's many other more diverse and inclusive people who are talking about wealth today. And
that's true. I was also going to just say that his daughter updated the book more recently. So just another one. And I also wanted to do a quick, another book written by Vicki Robbins called Your Money or Your Life is another great one.
Isn't she the one who's really kind of dubbed the grandmother of FIRE?
Yeah, she's definitely one of the kind of she was before FIRE was even a thing. She was, I guess I would say she's a little more hippie. But just really really aligning your money with your life and your time, and just knowing the value of, really, I'd say more your time in the grand scheme of things. But yep, definitely.
Very cool. Well, so for my audience, my audience are typically empath entrepreneurs or
Mhm.
leaders in corporate who are really looking to break out of the mold or live a more purposeful, values aligned lifestyle, whether that's shifting into entrepreneurship or just pursuing a passion project on the side. So, if where would you recommend someone begin if they were interested in exploring FIRE, whether it's as a financial goal or a lifestyle readjustment?
Let's see. So, in terms of resources, I guess I'll go to sort of like resources, and then maybe I'll go to, just some things that people can do like on their own, even. So, I did mention that there, like, FIRE is kind of this, larger movement. There's lots of different podcasts out there. I'll tell you some of, like, as far as a place to start, one of those great places is a podcast and website called Choose Fi. Um, so it's like choose and then FI, is basically it. But they have actually like a beginners section to their website. And I think there's maybe like one or two podcast episodes that just introduce you to FI and then also set you up with like some of the, financial tactics to just kind of get yourself going. Um, One of my other favorite podcasts is called Afford Anything. And I think you'd really like her, the host of this, cat, but her name is Paula Pan. And so that's personally one of, actually, it is my favorite financial independence podcast. And a lot of that show is not only about kind of like, what do you do with your money, but it's also a bit more about like, what do you do with your time in your life? And so she has guests that are both in the finance sphere, but then also in just, all other sections of just how do you live a great life. So that's another one, especially if you don't want it to be all finance. But over time, I would say if you listen to that one sustained, you're going to learn a lot about finances. And then there's another resource called Mr. Money Mustache. He's kind of like one of those grandfathers of financial independence as well. And so his post, it's something like this shockingly simple math behind early retirement is one of those posts that you can like, just see some of the simple math and, see what a FIRE timeline for yourself might look like. So that's a few resources. I was going to say, I guess I'll also throw myself in there. Not that I'm really a huge influencer at all, but I did a webinar recently on FIRE and like I guess the three stages to FIRE. And so I'll make sure I give Kat that. And my content is a little bit more about how to live, how to decide to go into FIRE, but to use that as a platform to, to propel yourself to find whatever your life of impact is. And so those are a few things.
You did share the Afford Anything website with me before because she was promoting her real estate investing course and you shared it with me. And I love her. She's bold and large and in charge. But I think the one, and I know the other ones, but the one that you didn't mention that I also think we've talked about before is Eamon and Christina of ourrichjourney.com.
Oh yeah, that couple in Portugal.
Yes. And I think the
Yeah.
reason I have always liked them is because both of them were former federal government employees and
Oh, okay.
and they achieved FIRE. So their journey always resonated with me. And I also love their teaching approach.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay. I was going to say I haven't watched theirs as much, but if I decide to move towards that expat and Portugal lifestyle, I definitely will. I mean, that's not totally out of the cards for me at some point.
nice. Well, but let's like jump in, like, because you and I are both trained coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And something I have really come to appreciate over the years, particularly pertaining to money, is the difficulty to follow through on any money plan or financial planning project design without shifting to some degree your relationship to money.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you support clients in really beginning from that internal transformational perspective. And what have you found really supports people in not only shifting their internal relationship with money, but as it impacts with their external relationship with and possession of wealth?
Sure.
Loaded question.
It is a loaded question. And I guess let's see, I think you're totally right in that there's this like, it takes a concentrated sort of awareness of like where that client is and, what are the things that they're working through. So I guess I'd like, particularly the reason why I like both coaching and financial advising and like putting those two together is because I do feel like they both, they play a role in working with people around money. So there's a lot of awareness that, helping people become aware of some of their own, I guess, money scripts around money. And then really supporting them and showing them like, all right, so while you're over there and you're kind of afraid of money or you have this or whatever that maybe disempowering view towards money is, like, let's still go ahead and do the things. And like, as a financial advisor, that's part of what I do is like, all right, so that thing is like drawing up a budget and like cleaning up some of your accounts so you don't have 10 and bringing that down to like 2, because I'm sorry, people, you really don't need 10 accounts, or some businesses do, but you as an individual probably don't, especially if they're not savings accounts. But at any rate, I digress. So just getting in there and really understanding both like the emotional and kind of mental components of what's going on in people's heads, but then also supporting them to like actually make progress on whatever their financial goals are. I guess when we work with most clients, we start from a place of like doing any clients we work with, we start from a place of like doing a deep dive on, what does their spending look like? Looking at their cash flow for a given year and then like kind of projecting out from there to see, where are the holes? Like, are they actually in a place where they can save, or, do they need to clean up some issues with debt because they're on a course to just continue into debt perpetually. So it's things like that. After we leave that, kind of cash flow area behind, simplify things a lot for them, we start to move into protection. Those are making sure that people are covered by wills and, like their family's actually going to be secure if something were to ever happen to them. And what things, if they're protected from any sort of like anything going wrong, if that were to ever happen. And then we usually move into investing, trying to make sure that people, like whatever their goals are, making sure that people are saving towards shorter term, longer term goals. And it really is a thing of like, once we're able to set processes in place, your money can be much more set it and forget it. It isn't this type of thing where, I guess ultimately, if your life changes, of course we go in and update your plan. But a lot of the things that you do are just kind of like building blocks. And then once we leave that room behind, we can kind of move on to the next thing. And so it's definitely kind of project based the same way that coaching can be.
Mm-hmm. As you were speaking, something that came to mind is the Parkinson's law, the idea that our work expands to fill the amount of time that we allot for it. Mm-hmm. And I think what money works similarly, but I think it's easier to understand with time, because I don't know if you've ever experienced like, you have this very time consuming commitment, and then all of a sudden the project's completed, or you, I don't know, like training for a marathon, you gain back 8 hours in your week when you complete the marathon or something like that, right? And then you're like, oh, I have all of this time available now. Now, what am I going to do with all this free time? And then just like that, like just like lickety split, the time that free time has evaporated. And I think that 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 amassing wealth or saving often works in the same way. Like, we're both entrepreneurs. I'm sure perhaps you can relate that we both experience like ebbs and flows where our income can be abundant and then it can feel very restrictive and tight. And there's
Yeah.
there's this experience like, oh, you know, gosh, how could I be affording myself this lifestyle? And now I'm affording myself this lifestyle. But I think coming back to what you said around leaving it and forgetting it, that when we can create a plan and automate the plan, then we can be living towards our financial independence.
Definitely.
Living out the plan, regardless of those ebbs and flows in our disposable income from any month to month.
So the first thing is fluctuations in cash flow. I think that that's one of the big things that really gets people about budgeting. So like when you look and just cash flow in general is those kind of one-time expenses. And so like that is one of the things where if you're on your own and you're trying to do it yourself, or you're working with a financial planner, making sure that you're really taking like inventory of just kind of like those one-time expenses and factoring that into your life or your budget. Because I feel like that's the thing that usually gets people demoralized, is just like they feel like they're doing so well. And then the trip comes up or the wedding, the wedding travel comes up. And so like that's one thing that we're very careful of when working with people, is just to make sure that we're anticipating the full gamut of what's coming up, to really help people to understand that. And then the same thing for business owners. For business owners, that income inconsistent income can be a really big thing as well. And so helping them to really like figure out what their normal income is and to plan for that is also a big thing. But then also I think that, I guess what I was going to say about things compounding is the same way that I feel like a lot of business owners start to like the way that their business, like once they put certain processes in place, they can like marketing or whatever it is, they can start to see the results that come from that over time. And, I think that, money is definitely one of those things where like you put something in place and then you step away 2 years down the road and it's grown more than you even realize. And the more that you put in that work initially, the more results you'll see down the road.
As you were speaking, I think Ramit Sethi came to mind, not only because he's all over social media right now, because he just published his Netflix special, but also I just love his definition of prioritizing your rich life, right? And like the idea of just really getting connected with your values around what's important to you and what you determine living a rich life to mean, and just how much easier it is to achieve financial independence if you're really living in alignment with your values and what fills you with the most joy. Like I know you and I both really share a passion for travel, and that's certainly a huge component of my rich life, is prioritizing travel. And I love playing the credit card game to travel for free and use those credit card miles for flights. It's like a passion hobby.
Yeah. I was going to say, I guess back to F.I.R.E, there's like a whole section of F.I.R.E people who are like super into all the travel hacking. I personally have never had enough personal bandwidth to get into that. But I guess one of the cool things is just that there's kind of like a F.I.R.E path for everyone. I guess that is one thing I really do enjoy about it all.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I love that invitation to just remember that there are always mentors and experts and passionpreneurs out there who are living the values aligned lifestyle that we want to follow or learn from or esteem.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Well, Brandon, I feel like this conversation is likely going to really kind of open the doors of people's interest in learning more about FIRE. If people are interested in connecting with you, where would you invite them to start the conversation?
Sure. So I guess probably my social media presence is Reexamine Wealth. And that's also my website for my coaching business. So that's one place. I was going to say it's also the financial planning and investment firm I work for is called Toller Financial Group. So that's tollerfg.com. So either one of those places is great.
Awesome. And as we wrap today, what do you think has made the biggest difference for you in becoming a prosperous empath?
So I told Kat that I was going to give a disclaimer that I'm newer to being a prosperous empath. But the biggest difference for me is that I think probably just gaining a lot more comfort with myself and in my own voice and valuing that. I think for a long time I was so focused on just kind of other people's needs and what's going on their side. I guess as I've focused more on what is that I really want, I've just noticed that I'm able to serve people better. I'm happier in my own life. There's just a lot more kind of love and joy to spread around all over the place.
Brandon, that's like the textbook journey of an empath. Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been so fun reconnecting, and I'm so glad to have had you on the podcast and just to have had this excuse to reconnect.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate you inviting me. And I was going to say, at any point, I'm always glad to share my knowledge of all things finance, FIRE, coaching, all of it. It's been great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.